Welcome back to the Sci Fi Case project, part 16. So, in the last tutorial, we completed this latch here, and in this tutorial, we're going to actually work on this sort of brace here. You can see here, it's got a sort of a slot here for something, and it might need some more modeling, but at this point, this is where I like it. It's referenced from this part here in these. You remember the Google search, sort of a latch system. So I'm thinking some sort of T-bar with a piston thing that goes through here, or not piston, but a cylinder that'll rotate a handle of some sort, and maybe it'll lift up a latch from here, from this point, which would be, maybe it would come in here somehow. I don't know. I haven't quite figured that out yet, but I think I like the way it looks right now. So I'm just basically going to repeat this modeling. First thing I want to point out though was with each of these, I had to do something a little different in terms of mirroring. You can see here that the rotation is in the same location, but it's off to the right instead of the left. And so it's important to note that mirror objects won't basically maintain your pivot point. So here's the original object I had at the beginning here, and the pivot point is here. And again, I'm going to hit Control G to group it, which puts the pivot in the center of the stage here. And then what you can do is hit Control D, which is to duplicate the group. So group number 5 is now group number 6 here. And now I can scale it in the -1 for the scale for Z, and it will pop up over here. Now both of these are in a group, so if I select this object, you'll see it's kind of a mirror reflection of that. So it has a slightly different pivot, but if it's the rotation pivot, it would kind of be in the same location for the rotation, depending on which way you're going. So it does do that. So sometimes you do still have to move the pivot, but I just wanted to show you, if you're just talking about the rotation of these guys and you want to move them, this is another route to mirror across. So let me go ahead and select these guys and just delete everything there. All right, let's go in here and let's figure out how to model this guy here. So we're gonna isolate this, take a look at it, see what's going on here. And you can see it's basically like a T, and it's got a bevel or extrusion bevel at the end there, and I did that the last thing. And I could add some more detail, especially some more edge loops there, but it has this cutout circle here. And basically what I did is I just duplicated some faces here to get this T from this object here. So I'm going to move this to the side and then pull it out a little bit just so we can have it off to the side. And I'll select this object and I'll hit number 1 on it just so it'll be easier to select the faces. And I'm going to go into face mode here. And basically I'm going to select this face, hold the shift key, double click, and then I'll click these little guys here. And I think I'll go down to maybe right here, because I can always extend it out. I think that's what I did last time. So what I'm going to do is duplicate the faces. Again, that's under Edit Mesh, and you got Duplicate. And now I can grab the blue arrow and kind of pull out the geometry a little bit. Click on it and go into Object Mode, and you can see it's got its own thing. It is probably contained into a group, so you can hit Shift P to kind of pull it out of the group, and now it's on its own. And with this guy, we're gonna basically create this sort of T shape. The first thing we're gonna do is go into vertex mode, grab these guys and pull this down further, because it needs to extend out a little bit further. So I kind of want to get approximately the correct size. That's about right. And then from here, I can get rid of a bit of the geometry. We don't need quite so much of these edge loops. So we have these two here, which are fine, but I can double click on this guy, double click on this guy, and actually I don't have to double click because it's flat still, and hit control delete to get rid of those guys. Double click on this guy, control delete or control backspace, and then on this guy and this guy, I'm going to do it for both of these because I want to set up my own division here. So the next thing I want to do is let's go ahead and give this some thickness. So let's go to face mode, double click on it, and then hit Control E to extrude. and pull out the geometry, you know, to give it some thickness there. Something like that looks good. And then what I'll do is isolate selection. I'm going to go to the other side just to select these faces, because we can delete these basically, but I want them to be inside a little bit, so I'm going to unisolate and then hit W, and kind of want to just bring them in a little bit so they go in. There we go. And now I can hit the delete key, so we get rid of all those back faces now. Okay, so now I'm going to add an edge loop right here, and I want it to be kind of square. I'm going to double click on insert edge loop, make sure relative distance is checked, and basically click right here to, and I want to give a little bit of, maybe a little bit of spacing, so maybe have an edge loop maybe right here, and then one here, and maybe one here. So I want it to be square inside here, and it looks like I need to move this one over a little bit. So again, anytime you need to move an edge loop, just double click on it and use the edge slide tool and middle mouse drag left or right. And so I'm just trying to get something relatively square. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to grab my insert edge loop tool. This time I'm going to double click and check multiple edges 1 so I can center it. I want to center across this way and center across this way. Remember, we need the 4 little squares to basically use the circularize command. So I'm gonna right click, go to face mode, and select these faces here after I clicked on the arrow there, and then hold the shift and right click on the mouse and go down to circularize components. Now I can hit R to scale and just bring it in a little bit. So I give it a little bit of room there, you know, and that looks pretty good. And then I'll hit Control E to extrude. I'm going to click on the blue cube and then the blue center cube and drag to the left a little bit, give a little inset, and then hit Control E and bring this blue arrow a little bit in. So I got one edge loop there, then hit Control E again, and then just drag this in. And I'm going to go ahead and hold the V key and snap to the center here. And it looks like it didn't go that way, so let's go back, hold V and snap to the middle. There we go. So now it's snapped to the middle, and at that point I can just hit the delete key and delete those interior faces. So what I want to do at this point is get rid of half this mesh because I'll mirror it eventually. So I'm just going to double click on that, edge loop, delete, and then double click on the rest of the mesh and hit delete. So now we got just half the mesh we were dealing with here. So basically what we got here, if we hit number 3, you can kind of see we get a nice little rounded slot, but you can see how this geometry is kind of rounded here. We want to make it a little more square. So let's add a few more edge loops here just to make things a little bit better. And I still have center line with multiple edge loops. So I'm going to select relative distance, click off, and now I can drag this guy in right there, and one there, and one there. And so that should hold that edge really well. This corner's held good. And then over here, we're gonna add an edge loop like maybe right here, because we don't want this circle to be stretched out. So it's nice to have a few divisions between, maybe one here, just to break this up a little bit. Maybe one here. And then if you look at the front, we're gonna do an extrusion for the front piece, but right here you can see how there's like this this little slot here for this edge loop. So I gotta add an edge loop directly across here, right about there, and that will bring that one up. And then right about, I think I did about halfway, but I'm gonna do it right about here. I'm gonna get a little bit thinner. So I got this section so I can extrude up from there. All right, click out, right click, go to face mode. So I'm gonna select first, let's do the front part first. So I'm gonna grab all these faces. And then I can hit number 4 just to make sure I got almost selected, because part of the mesh is inside. So I can hit number 5 to see that it is. And all I'm going to do is extrude that out a little bit. So I'm going to hit Control E, pull it out with an arrow a little bit. And then what I can then do is, once I have that out a little bit, is just hit E for rotation and then grab from the top here and kind of roll back a little bit to get that slant that I was looking for. And that looks pretty good. Now, let's go ahead and extrude those top faces. So we can click here and hold the Shift key, double click. So that whole line there. It looks like I missed a few because I wanted to go up to here. There we go. And then now we can extrude that up. So we'll hit Control E to extrude. And I'll grab the blue arrow, just pull it up a tiny smidge, and then Control E again and pull that up even more to say about maybe there. And that should be good. Now looking here, we've got some interior faces here we got to delete. That's what happened when I extruded this in or pulled out. I added these faces here. So anytime you add faces, if you're going to mirror an object, just delete them on the inside. And I did also, if you look right here, this one here, and zoom in on it a little bit, and this one here, I can delete those. So now we've got a perfect piece of geometry mirror across. So let's hit number 3. Let's stick a little preview of this, and I like the edge for the most part, but you know, we can see it's kind of rounding off at the bottom. So let's isolate this object here. Whoop, I forgot to go into object mode. Now let's isolate it and let's take a look. So looks like I missed a couple of faces. So let's get rid of these guys. This is probably what was causing the issue. Were these guys here? If we hit number 3, yeah, it's now smoothing at the bottom. I don't even have to add that edge loop, but I probably will, just to give it a little bit more support here. Again, double click, make sure relative edge is selected. And I'm just going to add one like right here across the bottom. And then I'll hit number 1, make this easier to see. And then on this guy, I think I'll add one, let's see, right on the top here, bring this up. And then I do kind of like the idea of this trailing back a little bit. So I think, actually, let me undo that for a sec. I'm going to undo and click off the arrow. What I want to do first before I add that edge loop is I kind of want to pull this geometry back a little bit. I want to have this similar kind of face of things going forward. So I'm just going to hit W on this edge and kind of pull it back a little bit like that. And that gives me the kind of shape that I want. Okay, now I'll go back to my Insert Edge Loop tool. And now I can click here and kind of bring that up, and maybe an edge here, an edge here, and that should hold that edge really well. It might be too much geometry. Sometimes it is a little bit too much, so we'll take a look at it. We'll look at it and see, and then maybe one here and one here. Sometimes it creates pinching, but these are flat areas, so I think it might be okay. Hit number 3, click off, and limits turn off wireframe unshaded. This gives you a better look of, you know, what the smoothness will look on here. Yeah, I like that edge there. See, there's a pinching here. So let's see what's causing that. If we hit number 1. Okay. So the reason why there's a weird pinch is there's not really a good supporting loop here. So we can have one like right here, and that will kind of get rid of that area. This one we could pull in a little bit tighter, and that would probably do it. So I'm going to click out my arrow and then double click on this edge loop and use the edge slide tool and just kind of bring it in a little bit. And let's see if that's enough. Now we'll hit number 3 and click off, and yeah. I mean, it's got a little bit of a slide there, but I actually don't mind that. I kind of like that. It's like a welded slide kind of thing. And that looks like a cool piece of geometry. This angle here, I could, you know, have it a little bit more angled. And so anytime you want to do that, you just got to make sure you have the correct faces selected in the front here. So if I select this face and hold the shift key, double click, and then I have to go down each of these little rows and kind of do it. Double click, and this one, double click, and then this one, and double click. And then that front part here, if I want to adjust that too along with it, because I do notice the angle of this little face can be adjusted too. I might select these guys at the same time. So I'll click this, this, and this, and then maybe these guys too. All these front faces here. So let's go ahead and then hit E for rotation. And I'm just gonna rotate this a tiny bit more. And whoop, too much further in. So the only problem when I did that is it did create a pinch effect here. So let me rotate this separate actually. So I am gonna do 2 different rotations. I'm gonna deselect these guys and deselect those guys. And so, yeah, I will just rotate this front piece a little bit. And I can also hit W and kind of pull it out a little bit. There we go. And that gives me a stronger angle there. And E, rotation, just kind of whoop. There we go. I think that's kind of nice. Now it has a smoother sort of curved line there. I like that. So let's take a look and see if we hit number 3 on that. Nice. I like that a lot. Cool. All right. Now let's see how it looks with everything. Go wireframe on shaded. So this whole mesh could be up a little bit more. I think with the circle, I want it to be closer to the edge here. So all I gotta do is go into vertex mode and I'll hit number 1 here. Sometimes it's a little easier to select these guys. I'm gonna select all of these guys, or actually I'm gonna select all of these guys up a little farther. And I'll just hit number 4, make sure I'm not missing any verts. I got all those. And then all I'm gonna do is like pull it up a little bit. So I just want the circle part to be a little bit tighter, a little closer to this part. And that looks pretty good. Hit number 3, yeah, cool. All right, so the final thing is to mirror this. You can see the pivot's way off to the side there. So I'm gonna center my pivot and then hit W on that, or actually, whoop, I must have had a wrong thing selected when I did that center. I think I had this guy selected. Is that what it was? Okay, yeah, which is kind of a weird place for this pivot. So actually I'm gonna, might as well just center those pivots anyways, right there. And so this guy, which is way over here, I'm gonna center the pivot. Again, for center pivot, you can go to modify and go to center pivot. And then I just have to move it to the far edge here. So that just gives me closer to where it should be. What it's doing is averaging out. So if you're wondering why it's not centered, if I had done it before when I had the whole object, it would have definitely lined up exactly in the center. But because it is just half the geometry, it kind of averaged out between here and here, and so it centers it there. But it's an easy fix. Just hold the D key again and move this, start to move this guy here. And if I hit the V key, I can literally snap it to one of these guys right there. And it aligns now. So now you can see it's aligned to the center there. And let's click off and go into object mode. Let's hit, yeah, make sure. So I hit D again. So now you can see it's the Z direction in the positive here. Anytime you see the arrow, that means the Z positive. So we actually want to mirror it across the Z minus. So if we go to mesh and mirror and go to the options, instead of, doing it just by clicking on it and changing it, you can change it in here. So we can go to objects and then Z, and we want it to be in the minus, not the plus, and then hit apply, and voila. Now we got the cool mesh here. Now the pivot's been shifted over. Now we can center the pivot, no, it was the mirror option. There we go. It's still back in the center. Okay, so now let's see if all the geometry holds up. I don't see any issues. Usually it's a merge issue, and it has to do with this border threshold value. You might have to adjust if it's a little bit off, but it looks fine. when I look at this, yeah, looks good. I did notice though there is a little bit of curve action here. So let's see. I could add an edge loop on the inside for each of these, and that would hold that edge a little better. So lastly, let's close out the mirror options, click on insert edge loop, and again, a lot of times this happens, like you just, you're in the modeling process, you're not really aware of like where this is at, and it's okay, these are a little bit different at this point. I mean, if I had to mirror this again, I could delete half and repeat. So now with this piece here, if I was done with it, I could mirror it across and go out like that with each piece. I'm thinking I might create an extrusion on the inside here though. Let's take a look at that in Photoshop here, where this little area can have even more, if I zoom in on it, even more of a little area for this piece to kind of line in. So I think I'll do that, kind of create a little spot for that. Let's do that real quick. Let's isolate this selection, and we'll hit number 1, and we'll grab the interior faces here. So I'm thinking with this, leave this edge loop around and have these faces extruded in. Might have some nice little detail here. So I'm just going around here, select those guys, and then down here, I could have done the double click, but I wasn't thinking about the time. So let's just select all these guys. And now let's hit Control E to extrude, and then adjust the thickness here so you can see as it goes in or out. So we want to go in the negative direction. So we'll go like negative point, maybe 0.2. There's a starter point. Let's see how that looks. That's too far. You can see the rotation here. So maybe negative 0.0, I don't know, 8. Okay, that goes higher direction, right? So then if you go negative 0.2, goes way farther. So what we want is a lower number on here. So you can go 0, 0, 3, and you can see the effect here. And that looks okay. It gives me a little bit more extrusion place. Let's try a little bit higher number. Instead of 3, let's try like 6. And let's see, we're getting close to the edge. You can also hit number 4 to go in a wireframe and see how close. That's pretty close. Probably don't want to go any thicker than that. And then extrusion, so let's hit number 5. And then hit number 3. Let's take a look. Yeah, I kind of like that. So it's got a little slot thing going on there. Now, on the bottom here, we don't need these faces here. So I can select these two and delete them. And yeah, so now when I hit number 3, you can see it has this little slide almost like area where, and I actually don't mind that it has let's turn off the wireframe unshaded. I actually don't mind that it has a little, real curve in there. I kind of like that. It reminds me of like a tub or something for this slider to go down. I might eventually want to add, a couple supporting edges, but right now I'm kind of digging it. I like the shape of it and stuff. So in the next tutorial, we'll kind of figure out what to do with a pin structure that will basically slide in here and rotate and pull off with the lever here. So the idea here is, let me just grab a cube here real quick and kind of scale this in, bring it out, get really small. So it's not the exact same size, but just to kind of give you an idea of what this might look like. And I'm just holding the V key to snap this over here. Is that this guy would kind of be in place here as a mechanism. So this guy here would lift and rotate, so it'd pull out essentially with the rotation here with the handle, and it would do something where, kind of slide across. So might do some cool constraints to create a sort of piston effect. That would be kind of cool. So until next time, I think we'll call this. I like this, the way it's coming along. Until next time, see you soon. Cheers.